What's up, guys? This is Harv with Harv's Corner. So I had a project on my hands. I was looking for a new computer desk. I looked everywhere. Couldn't find what I wanted. It was too expensive. Wasn't what I was looking for. And I couldn't figure out how to do things. So I finally decided, after some research, that I was going to make my own table. Now, I have some minor carpentry skills. I'm no master carpenter by any means necessary. I know enough to make me dangerous. But I stumbled upon a product that I thought would be incredibly fun to use. People have created some really cool stuff. Particularly, I stumbled over Steampunk Countertops. It's a company that's created these awesome line of products for resin epoxy. And I decided, hell, let's try it. Let's see where this goes, right? So I set out to build a table, and I figured normally this is usually like an ARC video channel, and this is usually what we do, but it was a fun experience, and I thought it'd be something to pass around to the community to maybe stir some creativity, imagination. Maybe it's a project you guys might want to take on yourself. Also, to explain to you that it wasn't nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be. If you have some minor carpentry skills, the ability to follow directions, and a little bit of imagination and a little bit of creativity, you can make this work. So we're going to go over this. I'm going to show you briefly, kind of step by step what I did and how it turned out. Alright, so I went out and got 2 hobby boards, biscuit jointed them together for my tabletop. Then I went out and got a couple of partition legs to attach underneath the user's legs, added some extra trim for extra support. So I decided I wanted to go with more of a steampunk mechanical feel for this table. So after a couple of different trial and errors, I chose to go with PVC, and I used 3/4 inch PVC, screwed them onto various edges of the table legs, and also I used some couplers to go underneath the table legs. This allowed me to raise the table up a couple of inches, which is something that I really wanted to do. Next up, I decided I wanted to incorporate some gears into the top of the table, so I looked around on Amazon. I literally found steampunk gears. It was a cheap bag or two of gears, maybe $10. Got a huge set of them, a lot of different colors, a lot of different shapes and sizes. I wanted to incorporate this on the tabletop. Now the planks, you can make these by yourself just by weathering them with different types of stains. I found these already pre-weathered, so I got a couple of boxes of them, cut them with a miter saw to fit them on the top of my table. And what I started to create was essentially a dam inside of it. So this black area is where we're going to be pouring the actual colored epoxy resin. So we started off with Steampunk Countertops Quick Coat. What this Quick Coat does is it dries very quickly. Does exactly what you said, what it says it does. It dries very quickly, and I wanted to seal it all over the table. It's important to use some sort of cups with measuring devices, some sort of measuring indicator on the sides of them. The reason why is it's very important that you mix these to the right ratio. Resin epoxy is resin and hardener, and if those ratios are off, it's going to show in your work. So I started pouring this out on the table, and literally what I'm doing is doing a thin coat all over the table. I'm doing that to seal the wood and to seal the edges. The reason why I'm doing that is because I don't want the rest of my epoxy to soak into the wood. So this is really kind of just a preparation, seal everything off, and make sure that everything is sealed tight and that your resin isn't going to seep into cracks or seep into the wood. This was super easy. Now it does dry very quick, so you have to mix this and work with it quick. The first time I did a mix, I did a very small mixture just because I was nervous, but then I got incredibly comfortable with it very quickly. I started off using just a normal foam brush, but you don't really need to. Later on, I switched off to using just my gloved hands to kind of just push the resin exactly everywhere that I wanted it to go. I even went around the edges of the table. After I put the planks on, I actually found some very small trim and went around the edge to give it a little bit more stylized effect. I also stained the legs, stained the table edges, and painted the pipes the colors that I was looking for. Rust-Oleum makes a copper color, which was perfect. I grabbed it, painted the color of the pipes, stained the rest of the table before I started doing the quick coat. The other thing that's important to note with this is as you pour the resin, you're going to see little air bubbles start to surface. Now those air bubbles will dry in the resin, but what you want to use is either a blowtorch, heat gun, or a small butane torch like what I'm using. And this is probably one of the first mistakes that I made, and I'll tell you why. If you're doing a smaller project, I think a small butane torch like this or a heat gun will work fine. But if you're going over a big surface like what I'm doing, you probably want to use a blowtorch. The reason why, and you'll see this later, is because it takes a longer amount of time to go over the whole entire table with such a smaller torch, where the blowtorch would have been much more efficient. So the quick coat dries very quickly, so a couple hours later we were ready to start doing our casting epoxy. So we got the casting epoxy, we started to mix it together. Again, please pay attention if you're using any epoxy, any resin, pay attention to the ratios of the product that you're using. The other wonderful thing about Stone Coat countertops, and I'll tell you why, there's a couple of things. One of which is the casting epoxy that I'm using allows me to pour the resin up to an inch deep all at one time. You still want to pour it out in about every quarter inch. You want to use that blowtorch to get the bubbles out, but you can pour this up to an inch at one time, which is something I was looking for because the depth of the center area that I have going on is about 3/4 of an inch. So you want to mix this together. Follow the instructions. Stone Coat Countertops provides awesome instructions on their website. There's plenty of video tutorials. They have their own YouTube channel with plenty of instructional videos and how-tos as well. I can't stress enough that a lot of this is paying attention to detail, and that's how you're going to get the result that you need to get. Follow the instructions they laid out, and I'm sure you'll be happy with how it turns out. I decided that I was going to do 3 different colors with this table. I was going to do a copper color, a gold, and then also a green, all of which are metallic powders, and all of which came from Stone Coat Countertops. First pour that we're going to do is the copper color. After we did our copper, we did a quick blowtorch to get the air bubbles out, and then we started pouring the gold color. Now you can see how the resin starts to shift a little bit, and that's because the table isn't completely level. I had to go back and kind of shim it in certain places to get it nice and level. You also have the option when this is pouring, you can move this stuff around. You can play with it. I took a stir stick and kind of moved the colors around in the general area that I wanted it to go, or you can get a little artistic with it, so have some fun. The third and final color I used was more of a metallic, dingy green. Again, all 3 of these powders came from the Stone Coat Countertops website. All the resin products that I'm using came from them. And again, I was able to play around with the colors a little bit, move things around a certain way, and really have some fun with it, kind of push the colors around in certain ways. How it dried, though, is not exactly how it looked, which was partly my fault. What I found out is that I poured too much of the copper color originally, so when I poured the other colors in, the copper kind of took over, which is apparently fairly common if you use heavy of one color and not heavy of another color. However, the results are even better than what originally turned out. So again, the color didn't turn out exactly how I wanted to, but God, I loved it when I saw it the next day. I liked that vein sort of feel that it gave. It was much better than what I anticipated. So I started to work on the first clear coat. Now, again, you want to mix this the right way. This is the Stone Coat Countertops normal epoxy that I'm using. You want to put this down at about 1/8 inch pours, which is what I did. So I started pouring the first layer and then blowtorched it as I went to get the bubbles out. Again, because I wanted to go more with the steampunk feel, and I added a lot of the gears to the boards and the planks when I put them down, I wanted to add more into the actual epoxy, the river setting in the middle. So what I did is I waited a fairly long time for the epoxy to really start to set, to really start to get tacky. I started to grab these gears one by one, drop them in place inside the epoxy and kind of push them around and line them all up. Again, coming back with the blowtorch to make sure that I get rid of the bubbles that I might have stirred during dropping these little gears in place. The end result was really cool. I was really happy with it, but I knew we had more clear coats to go to get this thing level. So we're down to our last clear coat that I wanted to lay down. Now at this point I have some depth between the gears and multiple layers of clear coat and the color, but I wanted to add a little bit more. So I poured all the clear, got it all leveled out the way I wanted to. I have about a 1/16 of an inch ridge going around with the trim, which is what I was looking for. This is one of the problems I was talking about with the blowtorch. Because I'm using such a small torch, it's taking me a significant longer amount of time to get all these air bubbles out. A regular butane-like blowtorch that you would use for piping would be better. I also wanted to incorporate a little bit more color to the top layer just to give it a little bit more depth. So I started mixing the same colors I was using in the middle and started adding it to the edges and kind of feathering it out into like the opening of the table, to just create a little bit more depth and add a little bit more color. I didn't have a whole lot of green added to the middle because of the way that the copper took over, so this allowed me to add a little bit more green accents to the edges, to the rims and the corners. The final product, I loved it. I definitely saw where I made mistakes, and you can see the lines in between the planks. That's the biggest thing that aggravated me. And the reason why that is like that is because I used silicone to seal some of the boards off, and I should not have done that. I should have just used a quick coat and I would have been fine. Also, Dozer decided that he needed to make a cameo appearance. He needed to know what was going on. So in conclusion, I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think the product was really easy to use. The things that I was most worried about turned out that I really didn't need to be worried about it. And that was the resin epoxy. I was worried about pouring it. I was worried about mixing it wrong. I was worried about adding the colors, but follow the directions on Stone Coat Countertops website and you really can't go wrong with it. So shout out to Stone Coat Countertops for helping me make this possible. I'm going to throw 2 links in the description, one to their website and also one to their YouTube channel. They have a slew of tutorials and awesome videos about the projects that they've done and completed, and it might spark some creativity if this is something that you want to do. A couple things to note that I realized that I messed up on. One, and I talked about it towards the end, was using silicone to seal some of the seams off between the planks. If I was using color, the color would have covered it and I probably would have never seen it, but with using a clear coat over top of it, it made it stand out a little bit. That's kind of a bummer, but at the end of the day, I still love the way the table turned out, so I'll deal. Secondly, the hand butane torch, which would have been great for smaller projects, but for something this big, I really wish I would have actually used a normal blowtorch, something with a bit more pep behind it that would have made it a little bit quicker for getting rid of those air bubbles. Lastly, really, and really I should have done this on my own too. I think I got incredibly lucky with it. If you're deciding to try to do something like this, I would highly advise trying this out on something small. Test it on something that you're not concerned with. If it ends bad, you're not going to care. Something you're not very invested in. Something small that you can learn how the epoxy works and things like that. I jumped into this head first, and that is a bad habit of mine in general, but I jumped in head first and got really lucky, to be honest with you. So again, normally I don't do something like this. This isn't something that I would post on the channel, but it was a project that I've been working on the side for a long time. And I figured it would be a really cool opportunity to share it with you guys and see if you like it. And maybe this is something that you'd like to do for yourself. Again, if you liked the video, please throw me a like, subscribe, hit that subscribe button, the notification button, so that you can see when we're sending videos out. Again, normally we're a gaming channel. Normally it's Ark Survival Evolved, but I figured we could throw this little tidbit in there and have some fun with it. Yeah, like, subscribe, throw a comment, let me know what you guys think, and until next time.